Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sovereign Self Show, where you learn your body and emotions are not in the way, they are leading the way. And again, I'm your host, Loren Cellentani, and we are diving deep into the world of pleasure, desire, intimacy. We are talking with Briana Kurtz today, and she is looking to have a deep and meaningful conversations around topics such as libido challenges, orgasm struggles, and expansion using erotic aliveness in life and work. Brianna is a woman's libido, orgasm, and conscious dating coach focused on supporting clients and developing their erotic fluency. She has studied human sexuality at Stanford University, the Modern Sex Therapy Institute, and has her MA from NYU. She has worked privately with clients for over 10 years and blends a somatic and science-backed approach to help women reclaim their erotic confidence and create lives with more pleasure and connection. We had quite the struggle getting ourselves to record, so I know this is going to be a good episode. Welcome, Brianna, to the show. I'm so glad we got this worked out in our new format, back to the original on Zoom, but we're doing it. We're here. We're having this conversation.
Yes, we did. And I'm super excited to talk about all of those juicy things you just listed out to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I said it off air. I'm pretty sure you're the first woman's libido, orgasm, anything sexual related on the show. And I know every time we talk about women's health, people are so receptive, our listeners here. And I think this is just another step in the journey. I know so many of you guys listening, recovering perfectionists, been on this healing journey, been on this spiritual journey. And there's a through line I've seen in my life and so many people listening to the show is opening up to pleasure, opening up to the divine feminine of life. So I would love to hear, Brianna, really, what was your journey? I mean, Cliff Notes version, but was it a moment that something switched in you that you went down this route? Or was it something you always knew that you were here to lead and research and help other women with?
It's definitely been a journey. Like you said before, I've been working with clients privately for about 10 years. Most of that was in New York when I was living there. And I was really working with CEOs, founders, high net worth individuals on meditation, mindset, breath work, and the somatics. I did not see the sexuality piece coming when I moved out of New York just pre-COVID. So I didn't see that one coming either. 19, I had been coaching for so long. I took a step back and I thought, okay, it's time to just take a break and maybe try some other new things. And I had a baby and I moved to another country. And then a couple years ago, I kind of got the nudge to go back to working with clients. And I was like, no. There's been a lot of resistance. And after I worked through that, I thought, okay, but if I'm going to go back, I'm going to pivot, if you want to call it that, or I'm going to refocus. And I didn't choose, I'm going to do sexuality. I definitely had a lot of life events unfold that I was like, oh, this is it. And so I was able, all of those skills I had from my previous work are highly transferable to the work I'm doing now. And I would say for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been diving heavily into the sexuality piece. And that is what my work centers around now.
So for people listening, how do you incorporate the somatic, the mindfulness kind of practices into the sexual energy? Tantra work comes to mind, which is a lot of breath work, a lot of energy work. What's that through line from the previous mindfulness meditation world come into helping people with their sexual energy and their sexuality now?
I think a lot of it has to do with, let's start with the mindset piece, is presence. That is the number one skill for having great sexual experiences, but not just presence with another, but presence with yourself. It's learning how to turn off when you walk into the bedroom or wherever you like to play, and just being fully in yourself, fully in the presence of another person, in your body, in your breath, as you mentioned, and being fully in your senses. So not just, touch and the smells and the taste of, what all of that lovemaking can incorporate, but also just, your proprioception, your body in space and being aware of your surroundings and I always say your senses. Within presence is sense. Your senses bring you into presence. And so really using them to drop into this erotic space, which really is a place that we go. It's not just something that we do.
Yeah, it's really, for me, I mean, all of it is just really coming back to the present moment, whether it's pleasure, sexual related, mindfulness related, getting out of our head, out of the monkey mind, into the body. That's one of the many reasons. That's why the intro tagline of the show is what it is. Your body is leading the way. And I think it's just really, I mean, more and more woo here, more and more spiritual alternative health, but still there's this huge, I think, stigma culturally around women and really being cut off from that sexual part of ourselves. And I think a lot of women secretly a little bit might struggle with the desire or the libido or this just wanting the responsive desire. To me, that's like really sad at a soul level to hear women and friends just almost give up on that part of themselves. So I would love to hear what's happening here. I see as awakening to the bigger divine feminine awakening, but where are we at in this transition?
Well, I don't know if I can say where we're all at. That is that's a tall order, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the women I work with, the thing is for me that eroticism is aliveness. And when women show up and say, I feel no spark, I feel no desire, I feel no thrill, I feel no excitement for my partner, for dating, for in my body, just no erotic or sexual energy, it's because they've somehow severed that connection to that aliveness. So when I talk about eroticism, I am talking about aliveness now, and that can be explicitly sexual at times. You say, talking a lot about, getting out of the head and into the body and women being cut off from that. Pleasure is an embodied experience. You cannot experience pleasure without the body. You can experience happiness, you can experience joy, you can experience those things in your mind. But if you want to experience pleasure, you have to be in your body. And pleasure is our natural state. It is innate. It is how we came into the world. It is are incorporated within everyone's original essence. But there's just been to answer your question, like what's going on, shame, negative experiences, cultural conditioning, unloving ex-partners or parents, fear, all of the things that start to cover up that natural state of pleasure. And my work is to help women kind of excavate and reclaim, and especially reclaiming their erotic innocence. That's been a really big theme in my work lately. That's really emerging and coming up. Get back to that pleasure and reconnect with that aliveness, which shows up in their body and not just in the bedroom, but also in all things, in all parts of their life.
Yes, and I noticed for me, it's like when I'm really into that creation energy, the aliveness energy, and sometimes when I'm just really in my body, like working out, I will feel the pleasure kick in. I will feel a lot of times my womb space start to like sync up. And sometimes I've had energetic experiences like Kundalini awakening through my body where it's felt like an orgasm in my brain. And it's all the same energy. That I love how you said the aliveness of it, and that the feminine, I feel like energy for me is the one you experience, being in the body, that pleasure, just even taking a sip of the tea and just feeling and experiencing every single thing in my senses. But we're so, I think, conditioned to be up here in the rushing and the perfectionist and like just go, more collective energy. So how do we start to really, excavate, but how do we start to really upgrade our own erotic software and hardware through our minds and through the body?
I think that you just gave two really good examples that I can kind of go deeper on. One is, again, starting outside the bedroom, which I would recommend everyone do if you do have very specific goals around libido or orgasm. Don't just go right in, enjoy the pleasure of sipping a hot cup of coffee or tea. Enjoy the sounds of the birds singing, enjoy the sound of children laughing, and start to just reconnect and reestablish with that. And then anytime you feel a thrill or a little charge of happiness, excitement, joy, whatever, pleasure, pause and let that energy expand. Let it expand even 1% within your body. You could feel pleasure in your baby left toe. Let it expand in your baby left toe. And over time, the more and more you do this, you start to rewire your nervous system to hold more pleasure and the intensity of pleasure. So there's two things on that. The first being, sometimes we'll say, expand your capacity, but I actually don't. I think we already have the capacity. It's about allowing that capacity to exist and holding the intensity of it. So when it comes to sex explicitly, a lot of what we have been culturally taught about sex is a release. We feel something release. We feel something we want to find someone to help us release it, or we want to self-pleasure, release. Most orgasms last 5 to 15 seconds. However, when we rewire our nervous system to allow more pleasure and to be able to handle the intensity, we can have become multi-orgasmic, or we can have value orgasms that last 20, 30, 40 minutes. To me, orgasms are a moment of enlightenment. When you are orgasming, I don't care if it's 5 seconds or 40 minutes, you are not thinking about your to-do list. You are not thinking about the laundry. You are not thinking about the thing someone said, and at least for 5 seconds, you're connecting to something bigger than yourself. There's a charge running through your body. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that, like you said, I hope, and through my work, that's one of my core functions, is to help women remember that, reclaim that, to allow that experience, and to find the meaning and the purpose in all of this.
Yes, let's go there. Let's go to the connection to the divine, to that something bigger than yourself. I just feel like I've barely touched the tip of the iceberg on that. But it is like the profound downloads sometimes that I have is like, this is what source God feels like. Like, this is creation itself. So I would love to hear, like, from a divine or bigger than self perspective, how you kind of see that through pleasure, but mostly, that orgasm state of being.
Yeah, you said it. You just said it yourself. Like, you're going to the source. This is how we were all created, as far as we know. There was a big bang at some point, our own personal big bang, and there we were created, and here we are. And so when you're working with the erotic essence, our innate nature, you're going back to your source. And and that can be different for everyone, whatever that means for you, right? We don't need to put labels on this for others, but I've just felt that a lot of people in their sexual journeys kind of have this sometimes unspoken question of, like, what is all of this for? All of this kind of hedonistic culture around sex, and what we kind of see in the media, which feels very hollow and empty, and hookup culture. And I think in my work, one of the most important things is helping women get back to what is the purpose and what is the meaning in this. And there have been, and of course, we can go into the science too, which I do love. There have been studies of why people have sex, and they found over 300 reasons that people have sex. Stress relief, connection, pain reduction, helps with period pain. It's over 300 things. I don't have them all on the top of my head, and it's every woman's purpose is different. And you can have different purposes at different times, different purposes for self-pleasure, different purposes for partner pleasure. But that is one way into connecting to that greater source, is what is your purpose and what is the meaning of your erotic life. And then wherever you find yourself, whether it's God or goddess or godex or the universe or some deity, great. Let that be part of let your erotic life be part of your spiritual experience, and let your erotic life, including orgasm, be a bridge to, or a melting between, your body, mind, heart, and spirit.
Yes. I really felt that one. That went straight to my heart. So speaking of orgasm, like, I know there's different levels to the game. There's different ways for a woman to achieve orgasm. Really, from that initiate beginner, different levels to the game of really mastering different types of orgasm. So I would love to hear what are those different kinds, what are the stages, all of that.
Yeah, we can keep it. I don't want to like throw too much, but there are, I would say, three main stages to erotic evolution. And the first is reclamation, expansion, and then mastery. And so reclamation, again, we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. It's that, a woman who may not be orgasming or at all, or consistently, or struggling with it, again, whether partnered or whether solo, these are the women who come to me and say, I'm exhausted all the time. Like I have no desire, or it's been years, or something to that effect. And this is all about, at this stage, what we need to focus on is like, what is blocking, right? Getting like that excavation and then that return to innocence and that reclamation of innocence before culture and circumstances put things on top and started to shut down that aliveness. The second level is expansion. So this is a woman who, there's some desire, whether it's spontaneous, whether it's responsive, she's orgasming, maybe it's not 100% consistently, but there's a good foundation. However, she's ready for more. She's ready to expand. She's ready to not just use it in the bedroom, but use it in her life. She's ready to, she's starting to realize, oh, orgasm isn't just a physical thing. It can be more. It could be from your heart. It can be a spiritual path. What else can I say about erotic expansion? That's kind of second phase. This is when you're like, oh, I want to try that. I want to try this. I want to I want to explore. I want to discover, the fun. And then you get to mastery, where it's kind of like, there's no more questions anymore. Like, you have your erotic power, and now it's all about how, just choosing how you're going to channel into all different areas of your life.
I love that. And it's really like pleasure, sexuality, this aliveness for life is just one way that we can connect to the higher purpose, that it's like, I started health coaching many years ago, and that ended up being a vehicle for a lot of people to get to know themselves, to master themselves at another level, to really connect to more of their own divine purpose. And this can be the same. Not everybody feels that way with pleasure and sex, but that, this is an avenue for self-mastery, but also for me, my experience has been I feel my purpose is a lot of embodying the higher, connecting with the divine, whether it's myself or with partner, it's shedding a lot of the cultural shame, a lot of the excavation. For me, a lot of numbness. A lot of letting go of the numbness was a huge thing, and a lot of sadness. And even talking about it now is I can still feel that wave wanting to come up. So for women who just no matter what part in the stage they're in of this journey, what does self-care, erotic self-care, what would that kind of look like, and why is this a non-negotiable for everybody?
Because this is how you rewire. This is how the body learns that pleasure is safe again. It's how it expands its capacity to allow that pleasure to flow through the system. It's a ritual. It's how you ritualize and kind of demarcate. I am taking space for myself. This is important to me. I am nurturing myself. My erotic essence is valuable to me. It is important to me. And it's not a passive relationship. So erotic self-care is, yeah, like you said, it is a non-negotiable. I do think people get intimidated because the minute you say that, they think, oh, it's just self-pleasure. And let me just be super clear. When I say self-pleasure, I do mean masturbation. The word masturbation comes from a really patriarchal origin. In Latin, it actually means to pollute with one's hand. And can't even tell you how many women and clients I've had who've told me, when I touch myself, I feel dirty. And I'm like, that's why we don't use the word. So when I say self-pleasure, I do mean that, but I prefer that word because it sounds a lot more inviting and loving. But erotic self-care isn't just self-pleasure. Erotic self-care is really anything that you want to do with the intention to nurture your erotic self. right? So I'm going to eat really nourishing food that I know is good for my digestion and gives me energy. I'm going to go for a walk in nature because it makes me feel like I can exhale and I'm connected to myself. Get up in the morning and dance just because it makes me sweat and my heart starts to pound and I'm breathing and I feel alive. We can do all those things with no erotic intention, but it's when we do them with the intention of the nourishing our erotic. Baths, breathing practices, all the things. And then, of course, there are the more explicitly sexual practices, right? Very specific breathing techniques, very specific meditations, even specific self-pleasure practices that I use and work with my.
I know you mentioned somatic work. It's in your bio. We talk a lot about that here and the breath. That's a lot of work I do too. How do you incorporate that into like your erotic self-care or just that kind of energy? Because everybody has their own way, right, of connecting through the body. So this is pure research purposes right now. I want to hear.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's just so many different breathing techniques. There is from different traditions, like there's Tantra, of course, like you mentioned earlier. There's also a lot of beautiful meditations and techniques from Taoist practices. You can blend the two. I always like to say BDSSM. So B is for breath, I'm going out of order. B is for breath, D is for desire, S is for sound and sensation, and M is for movement. If you can start with movement, start with breathing, start with tuning into your desire, even using fantasy if you need to. Fantasy can be a great asset, but we just always have to be mindful, like, and acknowledge like this is fantasy as a bridge to activate desire, but we're not going to get lost in the fantasy. I know, but it has really worked really well for some of my clients to really activate their imagination, and that kind of gets that spontaneous or responsive desire just kind of activated, and then we, take it forward in reality there. So BDSSM, I will say the one that's hardest for women, usually the last kind of frontier, is sound. Sound is the one that women really, really struggle with the most. It has a lot to do with safety, feeling safe, wanting to feel safe, needing to feel safe. And however, I've also found that it is the most powerful. And I speak from personal experience in that, but it's also because it's the thing that women resist the most when they get there and they really allow the sound to start, even just to begin. I mean, it doesn't have to be full-blown operatic situation. It's also when the energy starts to really move with sound.
So for me, when energy is moving through my body, very non-erotically, sometimes erotic as well, but and it feels overwhelming. Intuitively for me, the way to calm myself down and to allow it is to vocalize, a lot of times it's toning, sometimes light language, but mostly just toning it out, allowing that release. So that's where my mind goes. So what, in everyday life, during pleasure, self, or with partner, but like so this is for some women, part where people struggle the most. What are some tools, like, my mind goes there. My mind goes like actually like feeling and allowing that pleasure to speak through you. But what are some practices from the sound aspect the listeners kind of start to chew on?
Keep it really simple.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say sound, it could literally be just like a vocalized breath to start. And that's most women, that's what it's going to be like when they start. It's going to be like a little, like maybe your voice is even trembling, but the sound is coming out. It's just allowing even the slightest release through a sound. And it's really that simple when you're starting out. Then eventually you're going to start to match the sensation and where that is in your body to a sound, right? It's a little bit more advanced. Okay. So you feel a warming energy in your solar plexus, or maybe some people see colors. Okay, but what does that sound like? If that sensation or feeling or color had a sound, what would it be? Okay, share that. I also, encourage people when they're just starting out, be alone. Don't do this when your kids are home. Don't do it when your partner's home. Don't do it when your roommate's home. Be alone, have your privacy to feel your way through this. I also think it's great for women to make sound in water, water, sound moves faster through water. And so water can be very comforting. Like if you're taking a bath and just to start to, like you said, toning, just start to like, la, 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 la. It can be so simple. And you start to build trust with yourself with sound over time. This doesn't happen overnight. And the other thing, oh, there was one more I wanted to say, which was sound, the voice. So you and I earlier were talking about the mindset piece and a lot of the thoughts. Okay, so we have 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are negative, 95% of them are repetitive, and women wonder why we're so damn tired, right? But the thing that is always going to be more powerful than your thoughts is your voice. So if you have these thoughts, and again, this is an out of the bedroom thing. If you have these thoughts, you can use your voice to overpower them. Like if you have some thought like, oh, this is really like, I'm really nervous, I'm scared. I can just be like, no. And I can use my voice and be like, actually, whatever. And for some clients, I'm absolutely like, yes, you should talk out loud. Like use your voice, talk to yourself, be the crazy woman who looks like they're talking to themselves when you're driving your car. Whatever you got to do, but start to build trust with your voice as a resource for moving energy, for listening to yourself, for expression, and for building safety and all the things.
I love that. I think for me, rampaging out loud, like getting all that kind of positive Abraham Hicks kind of nature of like, even if it's general, but just saying it out loud to help reprogram yourself and your body, that was a little difficult for me. And sometimes it is because even if I'm by myself or with my partner, we start practicing it together and a lot of stuff, negative stuff wanted to come up. There is some definitely power saying it out loud. And I forget the researcher, but he was like into like sports research and stuff. But his thing was like, stop saying stupid shit out loud. He helped like professional athletes, and the more a player would say, oh, I'm not sure if this play is going to work, they would say the stupid shit, quote unquote, out loud. The likelihood of that actually happening, it's exponentially increased. So his whole thing was like, you keep the thought, okay, but don't consistently reinforce it with the voice. And I think the same, kind of similar to what you're saying on the other side of the coin, is use the voice as a focusing tool for where you want to go, a line in the sand. So if I'm feeling a particularly negative stream of consciousness or just something like a thought loop I'm stuck in, sometimes I will say, like, I'd say no out loud to kind of shock myself out of it, because it just feels like that repetitive loop over and over and over again. So I do think, and even getting a lot of downloads here, the tone of my voice, the deepness of my voice, the more that I am in my power. The first time I went into a cold tub, we do cold plunges almost every day, but this was a couple years ago. I was scared shitless. On the way there, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? We went to like this gym that had a basically a hot tub, but a cold tub. And I knew what to do. I'm a well-versed breathwork person, so I was just really breathing deep the whole time, really focusing on drishti. And I would be talking to my partner, and my voice was like from my womb, from my root. It was just so deep, still feminine, but it was like my true voice. Well, I've also, very long story short here, I'd love to hear your perspective if you realize this in yourself, how your voice changes depending on the energy and the integration of your erotic self, or just like the embodiment of like more of your higher self. I notice my actual voice changes to a deeper, more powerful tone.
Yeah, I've definitely had sessions with clients where there's been a lot of release of one kind or another, and their voice will crack and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't sound like myself. And I'm like, no, don't. And I mean, this goes back to my work 10 years ago. I was working with clients on, where are you speaking from in your body? Like if you're giving a speech in front of your company, maybe you need to speak from your heart so that everyone or in front of your team, so that you're really connecting and it's not this like kind of top down situation. Or are you speaking from your womb, and tapping into that power? Are you speaking from your third eye and from your intuition So, but again, that takes time to, first you have to have those, be connected to those places, and then learn to channel and communicate from them, right? And the other thing that came to me while you were speaking, specifically, I work a lot with women on anger because I've had a personal relationship with anger. A lot of women, when they were little girls, we're not allowed to get mad. We're allowed to cry. We're not allowed to get mad. And so that's one way that we have learned to be quiet but you cannot have an anger release without making sound. You can have a very physical anger release and not make a lot of sounds, but there's no way you're going to do it and be on complete mute. And so because of the work I do with women around anger, one way we start to get that moving is using the sound to open it up. And a lot of women, there's different stages to kind of anger release, and especially being really, really safe about it. And I'd have to say, I'm thinking of 2 clients come to mind that we've been working on this recently. It's sound first. Just saying the words, I'm angry, I'm pissed off, before the energy really starts to move in the system. It's crucial. And anger is one of those that we were talking about at the beginning. What is those things that put things on top of our pleasure and our erotic aliveness? Anger is a huge one.
Yeah, we've talked about anger here a lot. That's been a lot. Like for me, it was like it's the sadness and the fear and the shame, and then underneath all of that was just this like Kali, like goddess of like fire, and just that had some integration work to do around accepting that part of myself, because we don't even realize like how much we, at least for me, really repress that, and thinking, I've been on this healing journey. They like really, feel like not that I haven't figured it out, but there was this whole other shadow of me that wanted to be expressed, that really was ready to be integrated. And I think, is there a connection to like the other side of that because it's like this very primal force energy, like to creation, life force, or even like erotic pleasure energy, because they're both for me different energies, but such a powerful like primal force.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that one piece is women need to really, there's so many great, totally understandable reasons why women have such a complicated relationship with anger. We don't need to list them. They are very obvious and all around us, and in many of our personal history. There is a difference between anger and violence. That is a very important distinction to make. Violence, not okay, never okay, no amount of it. Anger is actually quite healthy, especially when we learn to express it in healthy ways. And that is possible. When you kind of say, how are these things all connected? I think it takes a lot of courage to do all of the things that we're talking about, to delve into the depths of erotic aliveness and love. Love takes a lot of courage, like real, real, real deep love. And this word courage, courage, so in French, cor means heart. And so it's the rage of the heart. It is the passion. It is the fury. It is the part of you that is a warrior for love and warrior for all the things that you love and your desires and your wants. So we need that. And yes, maybe there's a shadowy side that has some anger, and we need to bring that into the light and integrate, as you said, and we can. We don't, it doesn't, all of these things, like I always say, anger is just energy waiting to be transformed into acceptance, love, and safety. But if you don't, maybe that's gonna stay in that anger form, but it does not have to. It does not have to.
But of course, you said the courage thing. So I have a couple of oracle cards on my desk I pulled the other day that I just left out for a reminder for myself. And if you're watching video, I have an oracle card of a lion that says, I am courageous, steady, and strong. So, of course, what a perfect way to kind of tie a bow as we start to close down this show. The last question I have really is, we're recording this beginning of 2025, but no matter when you're listening, how can you really allow this erotic fluency to help make this year not only the sexiest, but the sweetest, but like just the vibrancy, the aliveness of life that we just talked about? How can we apply what we talked about to really usher in this real more realness of who we are?
Well, I think one of the things I'll say that I said earlier is starting to allow. So again, anytime you feel excited about anything, like, oh my God, my favorite song's on the radio, or like, I can't wait to see my best friend for dinner, or oh my gosh, that thing I wanted is on sale, whatever. Allow that to that whatever level of energy, allow that to expand just even 1% more, 5%. Start doing experiments with pleasure. Like right now, if you're listening to this or watching, you could close your eyes to say, how could I feel 5% more pleasure right now? For some people, that's going to be making eye contact with someone. For some people, that's just going to be smiling. What does that do if you just smile right now? What does that do to your whole system? For some people, it's going to be taking a big breath. And that's how you can feel 5% more pleasure in this moment. And then just keep doing this practice. Keep experimenting with, ooh, what does it feel like when I allow myself? Because so many women feel like they have to earn pleasure. When I do all the things, then maybe if I'm not totally burned out, then I get to feel pleasure. Pleasure is a reward. And I'm saying invert that. How can you feel more pleasure? You don't have to do anything, but just set the intention in this moment. How can I feel 5% more pleasure? I'd start there.
Yeah.
I think the simple practices are the best.
For sure. And from like a neurological perspective, like I love asking those kind of questions, the open-ended, open focus kind of energy questions is like, it gets our brain starting to subconsciously think about possibilities and answers. So you're right. Simplest practice, but it's so freaking profound. Every minute, every set an alarm, what I do is like those kind of questions, set an alarm a couple times a day and just remind myself, pop it in whatever I'm working through. That open-ended question, just tune in, just ask. Energy wants to move. It wants to move. So we give it the space like that, it'll start moving. But thank you so much, Brianna, for coming on. This was so much fun diving into erotic fluency, but like just, I love just the way you put it, the aliveness for life. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about this stuff all day.
Yeah, you're so welcome. If you guys haven't already, subscribe. We are on all podcast streaming platforms for audio and also on YouTube now as well for the full video episodes as well. If you could, please write a review on whatever platform. This really, really helps us get this message out to the whole collective. And so people just like Brianna can really shine bright and shine that healing message. That's why I started this podcast many, many moons ago, is how much podcast and people had helped me along my healing journey. And now this is my way of really being of service at the biggest capacity, growing every single day. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time.